All right, everyone. Welcome again to the Investing in Yourself series here on the Chasing Goalposts podcast. My name is Dustin Cosgrove. I'm your host today, and I'm joined by my co-host of this series, Randy Barker. Randy, as always, for the audience, the disclaimers can be accessed via our website at www.chasinggoalposts.com/disclaimers. Now, Randy, today we're talking neuroplasticity. So that's a big word, probably a word that some of us may have never heard of. And so maybe give us a little rundown on what is or what do you mean by neuroplasticity?
Yeah, no, I think one of the things I want to start with is this is a term that's being used in neuroscience. And we've learned a lot about the brain in the last 10 years, more than we have in the last 100 years. And I think this is an area that's very exciting. It's very exciting for us to learn about. And really what neuroplasticity is, it's the brain's ability to change and adapt through experiences. And I think it's exciting to know is that the brain is malleable and that it's continuing to change. We're able to change, with the experiences and the things that we're doing. We're able to change the structure and the neurons of the brain, which when I get excited when I know that is through our mental effort that we have the agency to do so. An analogy that I like, and I've talked to you about this, Dustin, is when I talk about neuroplasticity, I love to pull up a slide. And this slide is this picture of this beautiful mountain range, and it's got these cheap tracks of you can see where the sled has gone down. And I always tell people is this is kind of what neuroplasticity is that neuroplasticity is these repeated tracks of going down there, and the brain likes to continue to do what it's always done. So it continues to go down those tracks because it's easy. When we start to learn new things or we want to change behaviors at times, part of it is to looking at this mountain range is to go over and to start new tracks. And the very first few times you do that, it's difficult. Even though we know it's good change, positive change, those first few times we go down those tracks, and we've all experienced it, it's uncomfortable, it takes some effort. But what we do know is the more times that we go down those tracks, the easier it becomes. Now, those old tracks never fully go away. That's not how our brain works. But what happens is very similar. If a snowstorm starts, they starts to cover it up. If we stop doing it, right, those tracks start to cover up, and we don't go down those nearly as much.
So this might be a simple example, but I mean, this could be as simple as I go to work the same day every single day, and the minute I try and go a different path, it feels awkward, right? And so maybe that's another example.
Absolutely, right? So again, changing things up is a way of building that neuroplasticity. Absolutely.
Okay. So why is it so important? As we age and, we've talked about this before, about your brain's always changing. I mean, why is it so important, this term neuroplasticity?
Well, first, I think it gives us agency. It gives us agency in the sense that we know that we can change things. I think a lot of times people have this fixed mindset of thinking that, well, there's nothing that I can do. And I'll be honest, and when I was learning psychology many years ago, there was this myth that, by the time that we're 8 or 9 years old, that's it. Right? That's it. The brain is done. And there's, no matter what we do, there's nothing that we can change. And that's not true, right? We know that by the things that we do on a consistent basis, we can change the brain. So I think that's the first is it provides with that agency. It's also really important to learn things, enhance existing cognitive skills such as learning something new, our memory. These are all things that are really important when it comes to performance is having the ability to learn new things, the ability to memorize or to use that memory to store things. So I think that's some of the real important things when it comes to neuroplasticity.
That's interesting because, we hear about this all the time where, you work for 40 years and you're learning stuff new every day and you're obviously growing within your career. And then people retire and there's obviously memory issues or mental health issues or whatever, but then you kind of stop learning and growing. So I got to assume that's pretty important as you transition from, 40-hour work weeks to full-time retirement. There's probably some challenges that happen there.
Absolutely. We do a lot of work with people. I've done some work with people in that transition from their career onto retirement. And this is one of the things that we talk about is how do we make sure that you're continuing to learn? How are you continuing to make sure that you're challenging the brain and building that neuroplasticity? And there's some very good research on this in regards to the learning and memory.
So you just mentioned it, the word build. And so how do we build it?
Yeah, well, with the brain, and I've already talked about this, is there are some windows when the brain is much more open to neuroplasticity, or where we're building that at a higher capacity. And what they say is, that age very young, all the way up to the age of 25. And there is some research that says even a little bit more. That's kind of where, it's a lot of things are happening where we can build that. But what I will say is that what we do know is that from the time we're born to the time we take our last breath, we are able to continue to build that neuroplasticity in the brain. And I think the things that we've already talked a little about it. How do we build this is by different ways of doing things different. Learning a new language, being open to learning new skills, traveling, exercise. Exercise is another way that has been shown to build that neuroplasticity. Meditation, playing music, learning music. So these are all different ways of challenging the brain to change those neurons and pathways.
Oh, that's excellent. A lot of good information here. And as we know, these are shorter episodes, Randy. So I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit and say, what's the key takeaway for the audience as it relates for neuroplasticity?
I like to keep it really short and simple, and I use this all the time when I talk about neuroplasticity, and it's always what fires wires. What fires wires. So when we talk about neuroplasticity, well, I want to be firing and wiring the right circuits.
Awesome. Well, listen, as mentioned, we're going to wind it down for the audience. Stay tuned for the next Investing in Yourself episode with Randy and myself. And until then, take care, sir.
Thanks. Have a good one.
Talk soon.